The Fed15 podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a fiduciary, fee-based financial planning firm serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our host are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of Raymond James. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc. And now, here are your hosts. Dan Sipe serves as a branch manager for Raymond James Financial Services and Serving Those Who Serve, and Katelyn Murray is a financial advisor through Raymond James Financial Services and Director of Advisory Services here at Serving Those Who Serve. Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Fed15 podcast presented by Serving Those Who Serve. Now, as you know, if you're a returning listener, thanks so much for listening. Each week, we discuss the latest news and info that Feds need to know in 15 minutes or less. So whether you are a seasoned federal employee or whether you're the new kid on the block just starting out in your career, Fed15 has got you covered. Grab your coffee, kick back, and we will tell you what you need to know but might have missed in the federal space this week. We're your hosts. I am joined by the man in black himself, Mr. Dan Sipe, and I am, of course, am Katelyn Murray.
So, Kaylin, how you doing?
I am doing all right. You know, I'm ready for winter to be over. I'm very cold and I'm very tired of being cold. And I'm very jealous of all my clients living it up in Florida. I seem to have been meeting with a lot of Floridians this week. So I have a lot of like schadenfreude.
Gotcha. I don't have any letdown following the end of football season because it's an Olympic year. So
when does that start?
We'll be starting Olympic trials next month.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So pretty exciting stuff. And as I mentioned in previous episodes, this is championship season for indoor track. And my bouncing baby boy, Colin, who is the head of Viking throws and also the throws coach at Pawtucket High School, got 2 young men through to states.
Nice.
So that's going to be pretty exciting. And I believe your baby bro is heading over for VA states, correct?
He is. Yeah, he is. He's still working hard to join the 50 club.
Fitty.
Yeah.
Got to get fitty.
So very, very exciting. I'm not a huge fan of sports ball, but I do like the Olympics. I don't watch a lot of sports. I think I watched maybe 5 minutes of the Super Bowl. I watched only enough to get some good zingers in that in the first half of the game. I feel like Taylor Swift was working out her rhyming pattern of the breakup song that she would write about this boy if he lost the Super Bowl. So I'm very glad that it worked out, out for him. Yeah. I watched it only to get zingers in my family group text. So,
well, then Olympics should line up for you pretty well because there's a whole lot of actual sports in the Olympics. Because, and I know this won't be popular. I can hear the hate mail coming. If you have the word play, game. Okay. So wrestling sport, track and field sport, swimming sport, and the other things
I like the swimming
are competitive games.
Yeah.
That include a sport.
Yeah.
Okay. Speed skating sport, hockey game. So send me the hate, folks. You're not going to change my mind.
Hot takes from Dan's side.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the rebrand.
I can hear the X sphere blowing up as we speak, which I'm not there, so I won't know what happened.
Exactly. All right. Well, we've got some interesting interesting pieces to cover this week. I've got some interesting updates, some interesting news on the TSP. But before we get there, I think Dan wants to talk a little bit about our friend Gerry Connolly. So Dan?
Oh, absolutely. Tell us
about this man.
To quote that great 80s band Scandal, where have all the good men gone and where are all the gods? Where's the streetwise Hercules to fight the rising odds? When it comes to feds, I'm not sure there's any bigger champion, Gerry Connolly. And just want to give a big applause and shout out to him because he's been in there fighting the good fight for our feds. And anybody who's helping feds, we're down with them. So a little bit about Gerry, because we wrote an article about him, because we covered the FAIR Act, because every year Gerry proposes it to make sure that the feds are properly recognized for their contributions and compensated accordingly. So we thought it'd be good to talk a little bit about the gentleman himself. So Gerry represents the 11th Congressional District in Virginia for 16 years and counting. He's a senior member of the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, oversees agencies like USPS and the Census Bureau. He has a master's from Harvard in public administration. He was elected first to the Providence District Supervisor in 1995. That's in Fairfax County. Elected chairman of the board for the directors of Fairfax in 2003. And then he won his first seat for Congress in 2008. Woo! Tough year to come in, Gerry. Wow. Another round of applause there. Huge advocate for the federal workforce, but also for public school teachers, federal contractors. And other than the FAIR Act, he has introduced or co-sponsored tons of bills to support feds. Check out our site. Our Own Benefits Ben wrote a really nice article about Gerry and has a pretty good list of a lot of the things that he has done. And I think we're going to reach out and see if he or one of his LAs would like to ever come on and talk about the things that they're working on. We'd be honored to share our platform with him. So again, Gerry Connolly, round of applause. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah, that'd be great to have him on. That'd be really, really cool episode.
Yep.
Might have to make it a little longer than 15, though. Might have to. I do an expanded 15.
That might be a Fed 40.
yeah, maybe.
You know, kind of like that early one I did on Furlow's Cheesecake.
Yes.
So,
that would have to be a special.
But
special
as you
episode.
ID'd, I'm back in black because we still don't have a deal yet. So I'm on the no shutdown watch because we're counting down to March 1st. So we want to make sure that we do not lapse and have our feds furloughed.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
I know Gerry will be pulling for that.
For sure.
And you've got some things about the TSP, correct?
I do. So, if you've listened to the Fed15 for any amount of time, we cover the TSP from time to time. It's a really, integral part of our Fed's overall retirement package, right? It's a huge savings tool, really, for you to kind of save towards retirement. We talk about, federal retirement is having kind of three legs. You've got your pension income, you've got your Social Security, and then you've got your portfolio. And the TSP for feds is certainly a major part of the portfolio. By no means is it the only part of the portfolio, but it is a major part. And because of that, we cover it quite often. And one thing that Dan and I, and really the whole team, are very committed to is presenting unbiased opinions and unbiased information on the TSP that are based in our education, that are based in our training, that are based in these conversations that we have with thousands and thousands of feds every year. But we want to remain unbiased. We don't by any means want to bash the TSP. And so when we cover topics like, should I roll my TSP over or not? We are very careful to put just as much energy into the pros list as the cons list.
Sure.
And with that in mind, today we want to cover the fact that TSP has lowered expense ratios for some of their funds. So basically the average net TSP expense ratio decreased between 2011 and 2019. The TSP fund's expense ratio was between 2 basis points, which for those of you who deal in percentages is 0.02%, and 4.2 basis points, which is 0.042%. So basically, the expense ratios were a little bit higher in 2020. They raised the expense ratios pretty considerably from that, range of 2 to 4.2 basis points. They were raised to 5.8 basis points in 2020 and 7.6 basis points in 2021, which is a pretty staggering increase there happening only in, about 2 years. So something to be considered.
To be fair, Katelyn, a lot of people don't understand that TSP does not take any appropriated money from Congress. So as far as when they're funding modernization or services or things like that, They only have a couple different ways, and one of them is the expense ratio. So they were doing a ton of work on the site and everything else. Not a lot of folks were thrilled with the outcome, but nevertheless, they did a lot of work on it. And so that's the real driver there. But
exactly.
Just want to make sure we drop that in.
Yeah, for sure. So funding the new website, the new mobile app, and the mutual fund window was quite expensive. And as Dan correctly identified, one of the ways that the TSP funds that is through expense ratios. So we have a considerable increase in 2020, a considerable increase in 2021, and we're happy to report that in 2022 and 2023, those expense ratios have been lowered somewhat. So in 2022, they were lowered from 7.6 to 6.9. And then further last year in 2023, they were lowered back down to 5.6%. So we're still a ways off from the between 2 and 4.2% that we were, perhaps earlier in this century, but we're seeing those expense ratios kind of float down now that a lot of those modernization efforts have been completed. For better or for worse for some of our feds. But the average net TSP expense ratio, obviously still above that 4.2 level in 2019. I did want to go through just kind of net expense ratios for G, S, and I. So G Fund in 2021 was about 4.9 basis points. It rose to 5.9 basis points in 2022. And in 2023, it is back down to 4.9 basis points. S Fund, a little bit of a different story. It was 6.8 basis points in 2021. In 2022, it rose to 9 basis points. And in 2023, it did shrink back down some to 7.9, but again, still a bit higher. C Fund, a favorite of our feds, in 2021, the expense ratio there was 5.1 basis points. In 2022, it rose to 5.9 basis points. And in 2023, it's actually down to 4.8 basis points. So that one is actually lower than it was in 2021. And C Fund, as we know, is that large cap U.S. market exposure. So definitely an important component of the portfolio. Again, I will say, kind of similar to how TSP is not the only component of your investment portfolio, C Fund should not be the only component of your TSP allocation. If you are, looking at all these different letters and numbers and feeling a little bit like my mom, who says, Katie, when I look at these numbers, my head hurts, please just deal with this. If you're feeling that way, we can definitely help you out when it comes to your TSP allocation options as far as, is your TSP mobile? Is it not mobile? How does it fit into the larger picture of your retirement plan? We can help with all of that. Feel free to just shoot us an email at askstws@stwserve.com. And we are happy. One of our qualified planners is happy to talk with you about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, excellent point, Katelyn, on, it'd be very tempting right now based on the performance of the C Fund over the last couple of years to say, let's pile everything in there. I just need to point people back to history. And if we look at a time that was similar, not necessarily identical, but similar, that would have been the 90s. Okay. The go-go tech era. And, what we heard was it was a new economy. Later we heard era of the disruptor and some sensational returns in the S&P. And then we had the lost decade from 2000 through 2010. And that's where, feds who had representation in the I Fund, representation in the S Fund, fared significantly better than people who just bunkered into that S&P 500, because you do get a high degree of concentration risk in it. So if you wanted, and as Katelyn mentioned, you want to dig in further that, we're happy to have those conversations.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think that's it for today, correct?
That's it. I think we've somehow met our 15-minute quota. So we gotta hurry up and do the closeout so we can make it under the wire.
But we'll be back next week, folks, to bring you the latest updates you need to make informed decisions about your career and financial well-being as a Fed.
Absolutely. We'll be back next week. For that, be sure to subscribe to this podcast on our YouTube channel so that you get that little alert next week. Our YouTube channel is called Fed Life. You will never miss an episode as long as you're subscribed and you turn those notifications on. We are also on Spotify. If you are a Spotify person, I know I certainly am. The biggest thing that you can do to help us out is free, which is great. And that is to share this podcast with your friends and colleagues. Please do spread the word.
Indeed. And for more information on the topics covered in today's show and more, check out our blog. That's blog.stwserve.com, and subscribe to the newsletter, The Weekly Serving, and you'll get all the latest news for feds sent directly to your inbox. You don't have to go looking for it.
Absolutely. For those who want to dig even deeper into learning about your federal benefits and financial planning for feds, we do encourage you to join us for one of our complimentary webinars. So coming up, we've got Understanding FERS on March 6th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then we have a tax planning webinar coming up on March 12th, also from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. That tax planning webinar is really interesting if you've never been to that. It's pretty enlightening.
Sure.
The things that you need to kind of be aware of there. So I do encourage you to join us for that if you've never been. And they are, best of all, free and on Zoom. So no commute for you. If you do prefer a one-on-one approach, or if you've kind of been looking over things and you really feel like you're ready to work with an advisor, feel free to reach out to our team directly for a financial planning consultation. That email again is askstws@stwserve.com.
Gotcha. And remember, folks, no shutdowns. We're manifesting this. And
yes.
With that, thanks for listening to Fed15. I'm Dan Sipe.
And I am Katelyn Murray.
And we will see you next week.